As you are probably aware, I will be traveling to Europe, seeing father, family, quite a number of monasteries in 2 days' time, from Tuesday till 22nd of July, more than 2 months. And what do you think when an abbot travels for a longer time away from the monastery? What would be something to potentially worry about? Maybe that not everything is perfectly cleaned every day, or that the monks forget one day the sweeping, or that the grass is not properly cut. Do you think this is what someone would worry about? Or is it maybe more, imagine that they have a big conflict, a big argument. What would you think? What is worse in a monastery to happen? Something not so well cleaned, or the sweeping not so well done on one day, or the monks arguing, the lay community arguing, the monks and the lay community in big arguments. This is much more dangerous. Actually, I'm not worried about that, because in a sense our community is in good harmony. But I just want to make the point, the importance of harmony. And the Buddha was saying exactly the same thing. Before he passed away, we can read Dhamma Parinibbana Sutta, and he talks about the conditions for non-decline for the Sangha. It starts that the monks meet frequently and that they conduct their business in harmony. And number 3, that they depart and they separate again and go their way in harmony, in Concord. Because if you're particular if you practice meditation, you may notice how the mind becomes sensitive. And for example, when you practice meditation diligently, I think most people notice that the mind is sensitive, more sensitive towards order and cleanliness. I remember when I was a teenager, I wasn't really a Buddhist but a great meditator. And when I look at the way my teenage room would look like, I wouldn't be able to live in that kind of room. All kind of stuff lying around here and there. And I think if someone cultivates bhavana, they wouldn't feel happy in that kind of environment. So one becomes more sensitive that things should be neat, orderly, and clean. But even more so, one becomes sensitive to tension, arguments, aggression. And you may notice if you have a really big argument with a family member, with a friend, and then you try to sit meditation afterwards, does it go very well? No, because now all this thing comes up and you continue arguing, and I should have said that. Or you have regrets and it feels such a pity, why is this relationship now strained? This is why the Buddha puts such a strong emphasis on concord, on harmony. And normally the Buddha is very, very strict regarding vinaya and keeping the rules of discipline for monks and nuns. We chant that regularly on the Uposatha days, the instruction of the Buddha that we should see fault or danger, we should see danger in the slightest faults, danger in just atomic anumatesu vajesu, atomic-sized transgressions. Now that is a basic attitude. So the Buddha didn't have, it doesn't matter so much, take it easy. He was very specific that we should have that full commitment to keep the vinaya rules. However, when they had this big argument and that split in the Sangha occurring in Kosambi, the Buddha later gave, after that was settled, he gave very fascinating instructions. And he said that if a monk commits an offense, So the other monks are quite convinced this monk has committed an offense. We're not talking here about, say, killing a human being or very extreme things, not really extreme. But maybe the other monks are convinced this monk has been eating after solar noon, eating in the afternoon. And however, this monk now is convinced that he didn't commit an offense, that it wasn't after solar noon. And this is a potential for major conflict, because normally he should confess that now. But if he is convinced that it was an offense, it would normally be wrong. One shouldn't confess an offense if it isn't one. But if the Sangha were now to continue pressing that, and that monk may be quite senior, he may have many friends, many supporters, you may end up with a split like what happened in Kosambi. If one side is really pushing, the other one is also stubborn, it becomes a conflict, where a whole huge monastery, huge community ends up in strife and conflict. So the Buddha said, if this monk is normally known to be conscientious, a good monk, decent, committed, faith in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, normally, and he insists so much that this is not an offense, although you are totally convinced, just let it go. In this case, the Buddha would put harmony higher, rather than making a big split. And the same instruction in case one is the single monk. So again, the Buddha said in a situation where you're totally convinced you have not committed an offense, to the very best of your conscientious, objective assessment, and this Sangha now is accusing you that you have committed that offense, and normally you know that this is a well-practicing Sangha. This is usually good monks. Except for this particular issue, normally these are monks where you're convinced that they have faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, they're committed to the training, Pesele Bhikkhu, as the Buddha calls it. In that case, just confess the offense, even though you're completely convinced that you haven't done anything wrong, that there wasn't an offense. That's amazing. So important is harmony. And not pushing matters to over the edge, pushing it so hard that you end up with this huge strife. And you can apply that also in lay life. For example, husband and wife, who love each other dearly, but then sometimes they may also get into a little bit of an argument, isn't it? Now just imagine you're traveling, hubby, wifey, happy on a holiday, landing in some nice country, and now hiring a car. One of the two likes a blue car. The other one likes a red car. So now you have to, obviously you can't have both red and blue car. One has to make a decision. Now imagine you really pushing the matter. You use all the arguments you have, all the strength you have, all the little techniques of twisting your spouse's arm, all the manipulation you can possibly bring to bear, and so you may succeed and you get your red car. And now you're traveling in the red car, the color you like, and there's all this resentment, and there was this really bad argument, and there's this memory of strife, and both are quite unhappy. Or the other version, you just let go of the red car and you happily go for the blue because this is what your spouse likes so much. And now you're traveling in a blue car, a color which you don't really like so much, but there's perfect harmony, both are happy. Which one would you prefer? Would you really find it more important to be in the red car, the color you like, but with the tension and resentment and strife and argument? I don't think so. So these are some examples how we can recognize that for our own benefit, sometimes being a bit flexible, sometimes letting go of one's own view and opinion, sometimes letting go of one's own preferences. This is a strong area of attachment, one of the 5 khandhas, the focuses of the delusion of self. 5 groups of clinging is sankhara, here in particular, the volition, choice, what I want, will. And a great way of trying to weaken the identification and the attachment to that aspect of personality, entity delusion, is simply letting go of one's own choice. And if one can do that for the sake of harmony, it's usually a good trade, because so many of these things are not so important. And harmony is important. Trying to live for the rest of your life with a spouse, if you don't have harmony but strife and contention and resentment and revenge, it will be very, very difficult. So it's important to have that mindfulness, to consider whenever there's tension building up or conflict building up or difference in opinion, and simply to have the mindfulness to recognize, is that maybe now an issue which is endangering the harmony of our marriage, the harmony of our family, the relationship between me and my children, or the relationship at that group at work, or the relationship in that Sangha, the relationship in that community. And often we forget about that because we become fixed on our opinion there, or what we want to achieve. I really want the blue car. I don't want to eat Chinese food. I want to eat Indian food today. And these kind of very useless things which are not important, but we can get stuck on them because choice, the sankhara khandha, volition, is such an important part of our delusion of self. And the moment that is involved, we are willing to fight for it, to stand for it, to go to war for it. On the other hand, if we have awareness of that, if we notice that, if we have the mindfulness, then we can recognize that, and that is already weakening it. And then we remember, is that worth? And even if I succeed in winning, getting through my position, is it actually worth having harmony destroyed or weakened, have no tension? Or is it letting go, not maybe even for myself, better if then at least I have harmony? I do acknowledge, like with everything, that there's obviously limits in that. I'm not saying that one should sacrifice everything to harmony. There's important principles of Dhamma Vinaya, there's important offenses and so on. So obviously, whatever other people do, certain things, when it comes to killing, or they want to send you into war, which is incredibly damaging in all regards, the one just stands totally committed to non-violence, non-killing, and however much they hate you on that, or whatever are the consequences. So one also has to recognize certain things which are so important that you can't sacrifice that for the sake of harmony. But how many arguments and strife we normally get in with our close loved ones, with a community where we are in, are about these essential matters, and how much is about the blue car, red car kind of arguments. And then recognizing that and making a little sacrifice, which is not just a sacrifice, but also an act of letting go, to maintain harmony, I think is a good deal all around. Yeah, just one short reflections coming to my mind. before leaving, again, the community, to the best of my knowledge, is actually in good harmony. So I didn't want to indicate there's any problem. But one of the factors of wide effort, do you know the 4 factors of wide effort? Noble Eightfold Path, number 6, Samavayamo. What are the 4 factors of wide effort? Bobby?
It is developing the good qualities.
Yes, the developing, yeah.
And maintaining that whatever you already have, maintaining that, and whatever you don't have, increasing it, and unwholesome qualities, whatever you have, try to remove it.
Yeah. I think it starts with preventing unwholesome states from arising, abandoning unwholesome states that already have arisen. That one is, I think, the most obvious to most people. Most people understand the wide effort is that if I have, say, anger arising, if I have depression arising, if I have conceit arising, that this is an unwholesome quality and I should make an effort to abandon it. And the other one, most people know that one should develop good and wholesome qualities, like metta, loving kindness, like gratitude. Today, Mother's Day, a good way, good occasion to develop that katanyu katavedi, that sense of gratitude to mother, to parents. So these 2 are the most obvious, abandoning unwholesome qualities and developing wholesome qualities, like loving kindness, gratitude. But there's 2 more. The one, preventing unwholesome ones from arising. This is where people often lacking the focus. Now, this is nip it in the bud, as we say in English, because you may have noticed that once you're really angry, it's not so easy to abandon that. Once we ended up being quite arrogant, conceited, it's difficult to notice it, to let go of that. On the other hand, if you quickly pick up that a bit of irritation is arising now, just a bit of irritation at that moment, nipping it in the bud, is much easier. And still better is to prevent it from arising, for example, by sometimes not even exposing oneself to input that is typically triggering that. Sometimes watching the news, it's so funny, why would we watch all the news about the latest actions or statements from a politician which you find extremely irritating and disagreeable? Because if you notice what this guy is now recently saying, you will just get angry. On the other hand, we already know maybe that this person is quite deranged and so on. So what is the point of getting all the latest statements and knowing about it? And not exposing oneself to that through sense restraint. There's an easy way of preventing that unwholesome mind state from anger, from arising in the first place. But here I was particularly focused on the 4th one. If you already have a wholesome mind state, for example, Mother's Day, you remember your mother, maybe she's still alive, and so you call her, or you have a nice gift for her, you visit her, you really practice gratitude, appreciation. This is all good. However, we should always ask, can we develop that wholesome quality even further? We may already have good mindfulness, but mindfulness can be extremely sharp if one develops it to the highest pitch. For example, a person after the experience of 4th jhana, that is considered upekha sati parisuddhi, the perfect purification and perfection of equanimity and mindfulness. So very important, and this is one thing where we shouldn't practice contentment. Usually the Buddha always praises contentment, particularly with all material possessions. We don't need so much. Just being content with what we have, just being content with the food, with the car, santuti. However, with wholesome qualities, we are not content. Even if we already feel a sense of loving kindness or a sense of gratitude or a sense of respect, all these wholesome qualities, then we ask, how can we lead them to their culmination? How can we make that even stronger? Similar with harmony. If there's already harmony, that doesn't mean that now, okay, we don't have to worry about that. But if there's harmony, we can still ask, how can we make that harmony even stronger? How can we further increase that sense of concord? It's also good, the first one. Now, how can we prevent conflict from arising? There's no conflict. So many people may feel, it means nothing for me to do. Wrong. If there's no conflict, what is still there for me to do is bringing in the right conditions to prevent conflict from arising. And again, there's harmony, maybe also not just in the Sangha, it also applies in the family. There's good harmony in the family. Hubby, wifey love each other dearly. The kids are going to school and doing all their homework, are polite and respectful to the parents, good harmony in the family. And then we fall into this permanence delusion. We fall into a kind of, you could almost say, an utter view, this illusion that this is a stable thing which just remains unchanging. But if we are Dhamma practitioners, we understand, even if this is a situation right now, and the family is in such beautiful harmony, everyone looks at each other with friendly eyes like deer, not eyes like tigers. Everyone says nice things both to other people's face, but also behind their back, they talk nicely and so on. But this is not just continuing like that on its own. This requires nutriment, this depends on conditions. And if we just think, okay, my family is in perfect harmony and this is what it is, we may neglect to maintain the conditions that actually produce that harmony. We have to understand that everything is conditioned, other than Nibbana. Nibbana is the only thing that is not conditioned. And harmony in the family, harmony in a community, harmony in your marriage is not just there or not there, but it arises and passes away according to the appropriate conditions. Once we understand that, then we know we continuously have to make a deliberate effort to foster harmony. Otherwise it will not just continue. It will gradually diminish. That's the nature of all sankharas. I think this is one thing which many people don't understand. They think, oh no, my marriage is fine. And then they think it doesn't require any effort to maintain it and to strengthen that concord. And that is a big trap. And then it starts gradually fizzling out or becoming more unstable. On the other hand, if someone is fully aware that this is all conditioned, then they will analyze, what are these conditions for that harmony? And how can I continue putting them in? The one example is the little gestures, little gift, little smile, a friendly remark, remembering something which is important for the other person. It may not be important for us, so we forget it easily. For the other person, it's super important. So we remember it, and this is a little gesture, big effect. And each one of these little things generates that harmony. I remember once reading this book on emotional intelligence, And there was a researcher who was studying couples very, very extensively, I think also on video and micro-emotions and so on. And he became really good, and they had a very high, was really long-term studies, and they had a very high likelihood in his predictions whether a couple would be divorced within, I think, 3 or 4 years. He could predict that. And one amazing thing he noticed is that there are couples who have hardly any argument, very rarely, but they get divorced. And there's other couples who have considerable amount of arguments and they stay together. And what he found out, it is not the absolute number of arguments or how strong they are, but it is the proportion of positive interaction and negative interaction. And the couples who got divorced with few arguments had even less positive interaction. So they wouldn't see each other much and live their kind of own life. And then occasionally when they meet, they may have an argument. This one doesn't work. But the other ones who had arguments but would continue staying married and being in a reasonably happy marriage, they have their arguments, but when they have one argument, then they have 5 other interactions which are actually positive. And that one works. And all these 5 positive interactions which they have between each argument, this is exactly the conditions which maintain that marriage. But this utter view and this the permanence illusion that things are just exist. I'm just a lazy person, or I'm just a very restless, distracted person. This is all utter view. There's nothing like that. Whether I'm lazy or whether I'm distracted or whatever is a character trait that depends on conditions. And when these conditions are taken away, then this character trait will weaken. If the conditions are increased, then that character trait will become stronger. And many people just can't see that. So as Dhamma practitioners, we should be very aware of that. And it means we understand that we don't take any of this for granted. Now, this is why we have days like Mother's Day. I mean, it is desirable to do something good for one's mother more than once a year, Mother's Day. But still a good reminder that there are conditions which help to bring up that gratitude. And a day dedicated to that helps us to remember. Okay, over to you. Any comments, questions?
Some potential. I read somewhere it's called Stockholm syndrome. So sometimes it's not about positive and negative. Sometimes people are addicted to arguing with each other. That's why it's paid.
Yes, Stockholm syndrome. I think that is from this one kidnapping where the victims started sympathizing with the kidnapper and became opposed to the police who were trying to free them, which is weird. Yeah, so it is known that this can happen. I think it's a little bit controversial, that particular condition, but it is a known effect that can happen, that people start loving their abuser, so to speak. There's also dependency relationships. So some people may have that character trait that in a sense they kind of enjoy being bossed around. But in the end it is usually still harmful for them. So it's good to be also aware of these things. And I'm not sure enjoying arguments, I would be careful with that one. It may work to some extent. I think that one can have robust discussions and one can have differences of opinion. And one can have good communication in a good relationship, whether it's friendship, marriage, community. It is usually healthy if one can express even differing opinions And if you have a climate where you never feel you can say anything that the other person may not like to hear, that usually means that communication is very weak, and then problems can build up in the background until they become quite dramatic and cause big problems. So I think in that sense, I would agree. And you may have good friends, couples, communities where it's possible to have a healthy argument about different viewpoints, and then being able to resolve that can be very beneficial. Yeah. Do you know people that have worked long term, enjoying strife and argument?
It's my cousin. She just got married a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's first they come across like I saw them arguing a lot, and it's even more when they get together.
Mm-hmm.
That when one is away, the other misses. Addicted to each other, in terms of daily.
But again, what we may not see so much is all the positive interactions. And I would suspect again that this couple, although you see quite a bit of argument, they probably also have many positive interactions in between. And the argument may actually be, fruitful in the sense that they can resolve it. I think that's maybe another criterion. You can have arguments which only hardening the two positions, and I think that is quite poisonous. Or you can have an argument where things flare up, but then you sort it out, and then the issue is resolved. I think that also works. But I think harmony is still the best. and the friendly speech and thoughts of kindness, whether open or in private, words and actions of kindness, whether behind the back or directly to the face. I think that is the safest one. Okay, any more? Okay, we can share habits with all beings and aspiration for harmony and sharing.
Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled.
Okay, we pay respects to Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadi Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno